Welcome into the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, Chandler Holt, KSLSports.com. Breaking down the last week for the Utah Jazz, getting you ready for what is coming up this week. Boy, Chandler, it has been ugly.
It's been rough.
For the Utah Jazz. What a terrible start to the season. Like we do, we'll go over the last week's games, talk to you a little bit about what's going to come up. We will talk about, obviously, what is wrong with the Utah Jazz. Going to start doing a new article every week. We'll talk about that as well, which I think can be exciting. Preview the upcoming games for the Jazz, including the beginning of the in-season tournament. And we're going to start doing grades. We're going to start grading the Jazz week to week. I did this last year. I used to do it every Friday. I thought it was pretty successful, but I thought it might be more fun to do in a podcast form, and you and I can kind of debate what the grades are for this Jazz team, and we'll break it up into a few sections. And then we will, of course, answer your questions in the mailbag, and they are plentiful today, so maybe we won't waste too much time because the mailbag will take up a lot of the show, which we're always happy to get your responses. You can follow me at Ben's Hoops on Twitter. Find Chandler at Chandler Holt KSL. And, of course, always follow KSL Sports on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, social media, Facebook, whatever you do. Follow us there. And you can send your questions. We try to answer them however we can. But I send out a tweet or an X, whatever you want to call it, every week with a prompt to respond. And we appreciate everyone who weighed in. So let's look back at the last week, Chandler.
Yeah, the week got progressively worse for the Jazz in what we and a lot of fans thought could be a chance for Utah to pick up at least a couple wins. But they did go 1-3 in their last four. They started with a 24-point blowout over Memphis. 5 players scored 14 or more in that one. They followed that with a 2-point loss to Orlando at home. We can dive deeper into that one because it was a great game despite the results.
Yep.
That tough loss must have sat with the Jazz because the week continued to go downhill from there. They lost the next 2 games to Minnesota and Chicago by a combined 45 points. You can look at the Timberwolves and say, okay, they have wins over Miami, Boston, and Denver so far this season, so it makes sense that they beat the Jazz, but you can't really find an excuse for that loss to the Bulls. They were 2-5 on a 3-game losing streak going into the game, yet the Jazz still dropped by double digits on the road. What do you think about the past week?
The Orlando loss is not that bad.
Yep.
In all honesty, Orlando is like the second best defensive team in the NBA. The Jazz had a chance to win it. They don't get the last stop that they need. Don't get the ball inbounded on the Kelly Olynyk throwaway. So you crush Memphis. You're supposed to. Memphis is the worst team in basketball. Orlando, yeah. And understandable, you probably want to win that game, but Orlando's off to a pretty good start other than losing to Dallas last night. Minnesota, I've said all along, I think is going to host a playoff series this year. I think they're a top 4 team in the West, and man, Anthony Edwards is awesome. Mm-hmm. He locked up Jason Tatum last night in clutch moments in a game that went to overtime. Minnesota is good. They're going to beat the Jazz 3 out of the 4 times they play this year. And then the Bulls game is the bad one. Yep. The Bulls game is what you circle and you say, oh, something's wrong. And I wrote this after the Minnesota game, which is, hey, 2-5 is not a great start, but you've got 3 games now on the road in Chicago, Indiana, and Memphis. If you can win 2 out of those 3, you're probably actually feeling okay because this is a really difficult start to the schedule. You've played Denver, who's the favorite to win the title again and looks every bit the part already. You played the Clippers, who aren't great and haven't won away from home, but Clippers are going to be pretty good this season. Sacramento's going to be pretty good this season. Minnesota's going to be pretty good this season. I understood why the Jazz were 2-5, but you had to start winning games at some point. And Chicago was the first time I thought, like, okay, that's a very winnable game. And they just no-showed. Yep. It was maybe their worst performance, in all honesty. The Phoenix loss was ugly because they didn't have Bradley Beal or Devin Booker, but they still had Kevin Durant, and it was the second night of a back-to-back, and I understood that. Just to not show up in Chicago was very strange.
Yes, and it's sort of like you said, you circle that one. What's wrong with the Jazz? I feel like that's the question right now. And I was looking at some of the stats, team stats, compared to the rest of the league. Utah, last week, they were 30th. They rose all the way up to 28th now in defensive rating.
Yeah.
And they're 29th in turnover ratio, which is the percent of possessions that end in a turnover. And they're 28th in opponent
points. Who's worse? Who's
right.
turning the ball over more than the Utah Jazz right now? I mean, it has to be Memphis or the Spurs or Washington.
Yep, and they're 28th in opponent points off of those turnovers. So those are 2 things that you can point at that this is what the Jazz are struggling with right now.
It's live ball turnovers. I mean, it's literally Taylor Horton-Tucker, Jordan Clarkson, Chris Dunn, Keontae George just like dribbling the ball off their foot. Keontae George keeps getting ripped, which is like a thing you can't do in the NBA. You just can't have your pocket picked if you're the lead guard. But man, the guards are so bad. It's the worst guard rotation in the NBA, and it shouldn't be. But the reason it is right now is because Jordan Clarkson is underperforming so badly. And I know we will address some of those questions in the mailbag. But like Colin Sexton on a nightly basis, I don't know what to get out of him. Taylor Horton-Tucker is the exact same player he has been. Yep. Just in a bigger role. And that's the problem. You thought maybe, hey, you give him a bigger role. he can grow a little bit and have more success. He hasn't. He's still shooting absolutely dreadfully from the floor, and his turnovers are way up. And yeah, he's decent when it comes to assist numbers, but it's not I'm making the pass that leads to the play. I'm not making the pass to make anyone's life easier. It's like I'm going to dribble, I'm going to look for my own shot, I'm going to jump under the rim, and if there's not a layup or a crazy thing I can do, I'm going to kick it to the corner, and someone will get a shot off of it. But he's not moving the ball and making everyone feel confident that they're going to generate a good shot. So it's so bad. And last night was so obvious watching Chris Dunn and Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton and Taylor Horton-Tucker just possession after possession just have no idea what they were doing. Mm-hmm. It's so weird to watch Jordan Clarkson specifically, who's having a truly dreadful start to the year. Last night, 3 of 14 from the floor, 1 of 8 from the three-point line, 5 turnovers again. You keep waiting for it to just kind of fix itself because he's that good, and it just hasn't. He hasn't had it all year. Yeah,
when you look at the shooting splits for the Jazz and you see that Colin Sexton has the highest field goal percentage of every guard, that's how you know it's bad. And Jordan Clarkson, he has the second most field goal attempts on the team, and he's shooting under 35% from the floor. I think that, last week I said, he's going to pick it up, and I still believe in him. He can pick it up. He's probably the best ISO scorer on the Jazz, and it just hasn't been there so far this year.
I tweeted this yesterday. It has since changed. Keontae George had the best effective field goal percentage, which just combines, all your shots that you take, including free throws and threes, etc. Of all the guards, Colin Sexton has leapt him. Colin Sexton's effective field goal percentage is at 54, which is a good number for a guard. 53 for Keontae George is pretty good as well. Colin Sexton, though, was dreadful for the first 44 minutes of the game and came in with the garbage time roster last night with Šamanić and Simone Fontecchio and scored 7 points in quick succession. They didn't matter at all.
Yeah.
And it kind of built up those numbers a little bit. But, yeah, he and Keontae George have been the Jazz most efficient guards. And, Keontae George is shooting 43% from the floor and 33% from three. Not good, just better than what you're getting from Taylor and what you're getting from Jordan and what you're getting from Chris Dunn. So I suspect we're going to see a change to the starting lineup before the end of this road trip. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's against Indiana. Maybe that's too hasty. Maybe Will Hardy will wait until they get back from this road trip and you get some winnable games here at home in Salt Lake City before you make a drastic change like that on the road, because you can't practice right now. That's the other problem for the Jazz. There's no time to practice when you're traveling in between these games, and you have today to shoot around, work a little bit, but you can't be pushing these guys too much in between all these road games. It might be hard to make a switch with your starting point guard right now, but you're not going to get worse.
Yeah.
You have the worst starting point guards or the worst backcourt in the NBA right now. So you could make a change and nobody would notice. It wouldn't matter.
That's a good transition to a question I had for you. It's clear that changes need to be made, and it isn't as simple as play better defense or turn the ball over less. Do you think that rotation changes can remedy some of the Jazz's problems? Who deserves more minutes or less minutes?
I do actually think one of the things that Will Hardy did last night that really worked was he played Walker Kessler the long stretch of the first segment instead of pulling him out 5 minutes into the game in favor of Kelly Olynyk. He let Walker stay on the floor. He pulled John Collins, and Walker had the second best game of the season. Now, maybe that was just random and fluky, but I do think the idea that keeping Walker on the floor, getting back to the starting lineup you had for the last 40 games of the season last year with Lowry, Kelly Olynyk, and Walker Kessler in the front court for, 4 of those 8 first quarter minutes that Walker plays can be beneficial, because you got to get Walker going. Truthfully, Walker is a key piece of this team going forward. His confidence being as low as it was, and the fact that he does some unique things on the team that nobody else does, meaning play defense, is important. He rebounds and he plays defense and he blocks shots, and nobody else does that on the Jazz roster. So getting him going, I think, is pretty crucial, and probably more important than getting John Collins going even. And John's been fine. He's not a great defensive player. Plays really soft defense. He's in the right spot. He'll, guard a body, and then the guy will just, push him into the paint. It's oh, John, hit the weight room or something. You're just getting backed in. I mean, And I get Karl Anthony Towns is bigger than you, but he's just pushing you under the basket and getting a layup. It's there's got to be some resistance there. There's got to be something slowing him down.
That was one of the few good signs from the Chicago game was Walker Kessler's performance. I think that Nikola Vucevic is by no means a good defensive center, but he is a bigger defensive center, which Walker has struggled with in the past. So seeing him have a good game was good. And funny enough, going back to some team stats, this is something that I thought was kind of funny. In the clutch, the Jazz have the 6th best offensive rating in the NBA and the 8th best defensive rating.
Well, Lowry hits 2 threes in their few clutch games they've actually played. I mean, they've been blown out so many times.
Yes.
How many clutch games have they had? Like 2?
Yeah, 2 or
Yeah, maybe 2. I honestly don't know. I'd have to go back and look at these scores. But yeah, you get a nice little run late from Lowry Markkanen against Orlando, and you think, well, this team's cooking.
Yes.
This team's really playing well.
And that's exactly the point I wanted to take from that, is that they're not getting to the clutch situations enough where they potentially could be good. I mean, like you said, it is a 2-game sample size, but I think that when you get down, this is a point I brought up last week as well, when you go down double digits and so much in the first half and you're fighting, clawing back just to compete in the third and fourth quarter, it brings up problems.
You lost by 16 to Sacramento. You did beat the Clippers. That was another clutch game, and they hit some big shots. Jordan, even though he had a bad shooting night, hit a big 3. Got blown out by the Suns. Lost by 8 to Phoenix. I'm not sure those even were technically clutch minutes at any point. I don't know, because they were down big and kind of got it down to 5 at one point. So maybe technically it was a clutch game. Blew out Memphis. The clutch game against Orlando. Blown out by Minnesota and blown out by Chicago.
Yeah.
They really need a good game against Indiana, and Indiana has the best offense in the NBA. So when you're going up against such a dreadful defense like the Jazz, Indiana might put up another 150 points, which they did last night against the San Antonio Spurs, who have some fun players, specifically Victor Wembanyama, but may not have the entire roster ready to go forward. Hey, I want to talk to you about one thing we're going to do, and we're going to answer your mailbag questions at the end of this show. I want to start doing something new. And I want to reward people who are following us on Threads at KSL Sports. So I will send out a thread, I guess, from the KSL Sports account on Threads. Go follow us at KSL Sports on Threads. Again, if you haven't signed up, you can do it with your Instagram page. And I will send out the Q&A prompt. Ask your questions there, and I'm going to write a specific article just for Threads questions. Try and encourage people to move over there, follow us over there as well. Exciting. We're going to stay on Twitter, don't get me wrong, but kind of build our audience in both places. So if you have a question you want to ask on Threads, maybe you don't like Twitter, maybe you don't use it, but you have an Instagram page, open your Threads, find this story at KSL Sports or find this question, and send your questions there, and I will answer them before the end of the week. Excited about that. A new little element we can try and do weekly to get your questions answered in print form, as well as when we talk about this on the actual podcast. Do you want to preview next week?
Yeah, let's do it.
Should we do that quickly?
So the Jazz will be in Indiana on Wednesday. That's just a normal game. By the way, only 2 games until our next episode next Tuesday. And then on Friday, the Jazz will be in Memphis for their first ever in-season tournament game.
Jazz need this time off. Certainly they get back from this road trip, and you can practice Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I bet you Will Hardy hasn't practiced. Maybe they get Saturday off just because you get home, but man, they are going to have some 3.5-hour practices on Saturday and Monday, or Sunday and Monday, just to try and fix this thing, because you're getting to the point of where it's close to no return. Mm-hmm. You know, you dig yourself a 2-8 hole in the West. The West is too good.
Yep.
You're just not going to be able to climb out. I mean, I already think Memphis is in real danger, even though they're going to add a superstar back 25 games of the season in Ja Morant. If they're 15 games under 500, they are going to miss the playoffs. Even if they're good from there on out, you're just not going to be able to make up enough ground, I don't think. So the Jazz are quickly finding themselves in that spot as well. And the problem for the Jazz is it just doesn't get easier. Mm-hmm. We can talk about these next 2 games, and I think the Jazz probably split them. I think they probably lose at Indiana. You should beat Memphis. But should right now with this Jazz team doesn't really mean a whole lot. And then I do think you beat Portland here in Salt Lake City. But then, you go Phoenix at L.A., at the Trailblazers, which is maybe the most winnable, back-to-back against the Pelicans. It's you could go 2-8 in that stretch again.
Yep, the Pelicans look good so far.
Yeah, and you go at Memphis, at Minnesota. It gets daunting because all of a sudden you're such a bad team that every game is losable. Mm-hmm. And then you expect to lose most of them. So unless they can really figure out a new starting lineup or a couple of players step up, Jordan Clarkson fixes his game, you start getting more out of Walker Kessler every night, and then Keontae George starts playing well or whatever, you're going to lose most games. And the Jazz really could be heading towards a 25-win season. That's not out of the realm of possibility.
Confidence is really big in the NBA, and right now, like you said, if you get off to a bad start, it's a snowball effect. Because not only are other teams looking like, okay, we're going against the Jazz this week, and they're 2-11 or whatever it is, and then the Jazz are also okay, we haven't won a game in a week. It goes both ways, and if you don't have that confidence and don't believe that you can win every game, then it's just going to continue to get worse and worse.
All right, Chandler, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we will do our grades for the Utah Jazz. Then we will hit the mailbag. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up next. back to the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, Chandler Holt. Appreciate you sticking with us. Chandler, let's do this. I did this last year, like I mentioned. It was a little bit different because we didn't know what to expect from the Jazz last season, so I thought I'd give them weekly grades. I did veteran players, I did young players, I did asset management because I thought the Jazz were going to do more asset acquisition. In fact, they did. They added another first-rounder in the Mike Conley trade last season, and then I did how they were ranking out in the standings. I don't think we need to worry so much about asset acquisition, but I think we can still kind of address the other three, which is veteran play, first and second year player grades, and then standings where they rank. And we don't need to do each individual player. We'll just kind of do the big picture as a group. Let's start with the veterans. Right now, what grade would you give the veterans? And that's, of course, John Collins, Lowry Markkanen, Kelly Olynyk, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Jordan Clarkson, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, Lowry Markkanen is still looking like an all-star this year. John Collins has had his up and downs, but overall I'd say he's been a positive. And then Jordan Clarkson has been a big negative so far. He can't really find his shot. I'm going to go, since Lowry Markkanen is the only player that's probably in the A range and there's a whole lot of B's and C's, I'm going to go with a B-.
I'm going to say yes because Lowry's an A, and because I'd give John Collins probably a B-ish. Again, he's been so bad defensively, I think, but he's been pretty good offensively, better than I expected. And I think some of it's just the learning curve of knowing what the Jazz need from him defensively. I'm going to go with a C-, just because Jordan has been so bad. Colin Sexton's numbers, again, look okay, but it's been pretty unimpactful. Taylor Horton-Tucker has been dreadful. 10 points, 5 rebounds. You're like, well, that's who he is. But when you're shooting below 40% from the floor and below 33% from three, you're bad. And that's not good enough. Kelly Olynyk has been fine. He does what he does. He's got a great effective field goal percentage and is really efficient. I think he just needs to be a little more involved. Yeah. And I get it. He's coming off the bench. That's hard. He was so dreadful in the Minnesota game. He's kind of spun into a circle one time and turned the ball over and just kind of was just out there. So everyone's lacking. Oh, man, Chris Dunn, too. Chris Dunn's been terrible. I was advocating for him all summer and thought he looked really good in the preseason, and he gets in the regular season and just, can't do it. And he did it last year late in the regular season. He's underperforming as well. I don't think this is what you should have expected. So I'm going to say C- because only truly Lowry is excelling. John Collins has been pretty good, and everyone else has been probably an F.
Yep.
In all honesty, everyone's been an F. So other than Kelly. So I'm going to give him a C- because it's been really bad. Young players, first and second year players. This is Keontae George. This is Walker Kessler. And this is Ochai Agbaji. Man, probably C+.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say in the C range because you have Taylor Hendricks and Bryce Sensabaugh who have played 2 minutes so far in 8 games for the entire season. And then, so we're basically just looking at Keontae and Walker for the most part. Ochai has been leaving some stuff to be desired, to be pretty frank there. I would say I might go with your same grade from last time, a C-. It's not looking really good. Honestly, I've wanted more from Walker so far to start the season. He's averaging 8 and 8, and we were hoping he would be up in the averaging a double-double range, and he just hasn't been there so far. Ochai is averaging 3 points on not good efficiency. He's shooting 33% from the field and 31% from three. I'm going to go with the C-. It could even be a D+.
Yeah, Ochai has been a disappointment. I expected Ochai to have a better year, just kind of playing that role. And again, it's just his second season, but he had played 4 years at Kansas. This is when you need to start playing a little bit better. And he's not playing very well right now. That's a problem.
Yep.
You gotta start making a difference if you want to be in the rotation. And unfortunately, they're not going to wait around for you forever. He's not 19. He wasn't their own pick. I know they traded for him, but you just don't get as much leeway in those situations. So he's got to figure out how to start playing a little bit better and making more of an impact. He has moments. His block last night on Zach LaVine where he runs the court, catches him at the rim. It's that's a freak athlete who has great defensive instincts. And I think we do know that he has those. He just has to show it more consistently. He hasn't. And then I think similarly, he needs to make sure he's hitting his threes at a higher rate, which again, it looks pretty good when it's coming out of his hand. It's not going in enough. I think it will get there.
Yes.
I think he will improve to the point where it's fine. I also think Walker will improve. Keontae's been fine. He's not maybe been as good as I had expected. He's also really trying to play point guard really hard, which is I wonder if you were to move him into the starting lineup if he just kind of plays Keontae's game, which is what he did in the summer league where he was so good. So yeah, C-, C+ for me, somewhere right in that range, maybe just a solid C.
Yep.
And then we can go where the Jazz are in the standings, and I think this is a very clear F.
F, yeah. They're 14th in the West.
And 28th in the league overall. Only 2 teams in the NBA are worse. That's Memphis and Washington. It's if you had said the Jazz were down with the Washington Wizards of the world, to start the season, you'd be like, what? Did Lowry get traded? Like, what happened? So, yeah, they're dreadful. I mean, the Jazz are just a really terrible basketball team right now. So an F there. And at some point, it's funny, if they stay here, we're going to start changing these grades because we'll be like, oh, A+, you're in the running for a top 3 pick.
Yes.
And this isn't the draft to do it. If you were going to do it last year and have a chance at Victor Wembanyama. But I will also say this. You hear bad draft. It's like, Giannis was taken in a bad draft.
Yep.
Anthony Edwards was taken in a bad draft. So, like, you can have bad drafts and still get a superstar out of it. Every year, you just, if you get to a point where you have to pull the plug on this season and try and get a top pick, at least you get to keep this pick. You don't trade it to Oklahoma City, and that's already looking far more realistic than I expected to start the year.
And let's be clear about two things. These are not projections for the year. We're only 8 games into the season, so things can still get turned around. We're strictly talking about what we have seen so far 2 weeks into the NBA season.
Yeah, and really we're going to do this week to week, so it'll kind of just be like what we saw over the last week.
Yep.
It's pretty small, and it gives you a big idea of like where you are. Same way if you were a teacher tracking your children, we are tracking the Jazz players right now. So bad grades all around, C's and an F for the most part. For the veterans, the first and second year players, and then the standings overall as a team. So, should we get into the mailbag?
Yeah, let's do it. First up, we have a question from Tyson Newman. At what point in the season do you prioritize development of the young players? Jazz aren't 10 games in, but hard to see this turning into a winning season.
Here's the real hard part for Talen Horton-Tucker. Last night, he plays 24 minutes. He has 5 points. He has 4 assists. He shoots 2 of 5 from the floor and 1 of 3 from the three-point line. Here's Keontae George's stat line. He has 5 points. He has 4 assists. He shoots 2 of 5 from the floor, 1 of 3 from the three-point line. The exact same stat line.
Yep.
Well, Chandler, if you're a head coach in the NBA and you've got a 22-year-old who's in his 5th year in the NBA and you have a 19-year-old who's in his 8th game in the NBA and he's giving you the exact same production statistically, it becomes really easy for me to make that switch. Because what you can't do is say, hey, Talen, I know you haven't done anything wrong in the preseason. You've been with the roster longer. You've got some seniority. I'm just going to take your job away because I want to play Keontae even though he's not proven it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get 10 games into the season and Talen's not playing better than Keontae, all of a sudden I have an excuse to make the change. And by the way, it's the right change.
Yes.
Because you prioritize your young guys if they're performing the same way as the veterans. And you're on an expiring contract if you're Talen. Your upside's not there. You haven't grown at all since really you've been in the NBA. It gets really easy to pull your job. So that's what's troubling for Talen Horton-Tucker. So I don't think it's far off at all.
No.
I think the Jazz have wanted to do it. They just haven't had an excuse to do it. In fact, the only thing that's probably preventing them is that Keontae hasn't stepped up and been, gangbusters. He just hasn't been unreal good. Mm-hmm. He still moves the ball better than anyone on the team, I think. But if he had been great, like we had seen in the summer league, he would have already taken the job. The only problem is he just hasn't done that yet.
Yes, I think that change will come this month, if not in the next week or two. But Tyson was asking about all of the young players, not just Keontae. Do we think that if the Jazz maybe fall to, I don't even know, 5-20, something like that, do you think that Bryce Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks maybe move up and get more minutes with the Jazz?
Not Bryce, but definitely Taylor.
Okay.
Because I think the plan has been to get Taylor back midseason anyways. Yeah. And maybe you just accelerate that and you say, hey, you know what? Like, the problem is there are not that many minutes in the front court. Like, I don't know where you get him on the floor unless you think he can play the 3, and then you can back him up a little bit. But the nice thing is, like, he went and played 27 minutes with the Stars in their preseason debut. They only have one preseason game. He had 17, 7, and 3 blocks. It's like, okay, that's awesome. That's exactly what you want him to do. You want him to play a bunch, gain some confidence, have success. And truthfully, ideally, perfect world, the Jazz guards would be playing good enough that they could put Keontae George in the G League and let him play 30 minutes also.
Yes.
And I still wouldn't rule it out, I guess. But if he can play 25 minutes in the NBA, you just haven't played 25 minutes in the NBA.
And through 8 games, he's already at just under 21 minutes a game. Yeah. So he's right there. Next up, a question from Matty Ice, courtesy of Scott Gerard. When do we start critiquing Will Hardy?
Will Hardy is really trying to make a lot of changes. Like,
yes.
He changes the rotation almost every night. And if you want to critique that, that's fine, but that's better than just sticking with the same thing that's not working. Like last night in the third quarter, Talen Horton-Tucker and Jordan Clarkson go in and continue their horrible turnover problems from the first half, and he yanks both of them. He pulled both of them off the floor and said, all right, Colin Sexton, or Keontae, you guys are our guys. Like, that's what I'm going with. He's done that. He kept Walker Kessler on the floor longer, like I said in the first quarter last night. Like, he is continuing to try and plug and play things. Now, if you think the Jazz should be playing more pick and roll because it's an easier offensive system than what he's trying to, and that would give the Jazz some maybe bail them out a little bit to have a better offense. I would listen to that. I'm just not at the point where I'm necessarily critiquing them because it's like, well, I mean, Jordan Clarkson's playing terrible.
Yeah.
What's he supposed to do about that? Taylor Horton-Tucker is realistically probably the best guard he had to go in to start the year, and if not, it was Chris Dunn. It was like, well, Chris Dunn was out of the NBA 6 months ago. So I don't think Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck have necessarily set him up to have a ton of great pieces this year. I do like that he is tinkering and trying to do different things because a lot of coaches are so stubborn, they're just going to stick with the same thing over and over. But the Jazz aren't winning, and everyone deserves blame for that. I promise you, no one's beating themselves up worse than Will Hardy. I bet you he feels terrible right now. He's like, what? Why did I have so much success in year one? What a huge mistake. Now there's these expectations this year. So I think it's fine to criticize him if you know what you're criticizing.
Yes.
Don't just be like, oh, he's a bad coach. Well, what does that mean? Like, well, he has really bad players, and maybe he's got a system that's not working for those players. If that's what you want to criticize, I'd listen to that.
The two youngest coaches in the NBA right now are Will Hardy and Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla. First of all, I'll talk about two coaches in very different situations right now. But Will Hardy is the one of two youngest coaches in the NBA, and he's dealing with a roster of guys that maybe don't fit entirely well together, and some of them aren't performing up to their highest standard. Like, I think that when you're on a stage like the NBA, you deserve to be criticized, right? There's a lot riding on every game and the entire season, but quite frankly, it's looking like right now the Jazz aren't competing for a lot, so it makes sense that he should be switching things up every single game.
Yeah.
So I think that he should be criticized. Everyone in the NBA should be criticized to a degree.
Yeah, and criticism isn't meaning complaining.
Yes.
Criticism is you're taking a critical eye of something, and I think Will Hardy actually has been very critical of himself as well. That's why he's making all these changes. He's making critical changes. And so, if he was in Boston and he had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and that team, he's probably coaching better.
Yep.
Well, it's easy to coach good players. Joe Mazzulla, is he a great coach? I don't know. Would he be doing any better in Utah? Probably not.
Yep.
So, you can always criticize him. I think that's totally fair. Just recognize what you're looking at. And that's not to say that you're not, I'm not to say Matty Ice that you're looking at the right things.
Next up from Glenn Anderson. Also, let me give a quick shout out to Glenn Anderson. He's been here in every single mailbag for us. Too many guys that need shots, but not enough time for everyone. So people are pressing for their own thing instead of team goals. Is my assessment way off or a little true?
I think that is some of it. The main problem is, and I'm not just trying to blame Taylor Horton-Tucker, but he takes 20 shots in Minnesota and makes 6 of them. It's like, well, you don't need 20 shots, actually, Taylor. You may want them. I want to take 20 shots in the NBA. So far, I'm at 0. A career 0 field goal attempts. Everyone wants to shoot. That's the fun part. It's not your job. So, yes, in that sense, too many guys want shots. I don't say need shots. I really don't think that many Jazz players need shots. I can draw up a shot chart of who needs to have shots. Lowry needs 20 to 25. John Collins probably needs 12 to 17. Jordan Clarkson probably needs 12 to 17, maybe a little bit more. I think Walker needs 8. I think Kelly needs 7. I think Keontae actually needs some of those shots.
Yes.
My biggest criticism of Keontae is he's not being selfish enough. And I think he's thinking so hard, which is what a rookie does.
Yes.
He's just like, what's the read? Where's my guys? Who am I being defended by? Which is how you end up getting ripped by Andre Drummond. But it's like, what am I looking at? I'm not paying attention that I'm dribbling the ball. I think he needs to be more selfish.
Yes.
So maybe if you want to say those are the guys who needs more shots, but Glenn, I guess I would just say they need the right guys getting the shots.
Yes.
That's the problem. Taylor shouldn't need a lot of shots to be a good player. In fact, Taylor should be, I got 3 shots. 2 of them were layups. I took 1 3 on the game. It either did or it didn't go in. But I'm really high efficiency and a low usage because next to me are a bunch of guys who can take 15 shots a game. Jordan can take 15. Lowry can take 15. Walker can take 8 to 10. And John Collins can take 15. So I'm just going to be super unselfish. I'm going to stick in the NBA. I'm going to play defense. I'm going to make the right shot and take the right shot. But him taking 20 shots is a real issue.
Yes.
Otherwise, you don't need it. That's why, and maybe we can address this in some of these questions coming up. Maybe the answer in the backcourt isn't even as simple of like, oh, we'll just put in Colin Sexton and Keontae George. Like maybe you do something crazy and you put Ochai out there.
Yeah.
Who doesn't need shots. He'll take 3 or 4 if he's wide open in the corner. And you put like Jordan Clarkson with him. And you say, well, we're removing a shot taker out of the game who will just kind of grab it and either shoot it and or pass it, but he's not going to dribble. Like maybe you do something totally out of left field with a guy like Ochai and see if that gets you going. And by the way, that's still a trend towards being young.
Yep.
That's still a young move for the Jazz. So I wouldn't just say like it's automatically the obvious move of going with some of these younger guys.
And that was a big thing that we speculated on the Jazz's starting lineup ahead of the season, like who fits best, right? Yeah. That's why we were talking about Chris Dunn, because he's a defender and a playmaker.
He doesn't need shots.
Yes, exactly. And when you look at the stats of all Jazz players that get 15 or more minutes, THT has the highest assist-to-turnover ratio, and he's not known as a playmaker. I think that the biggest problem for the Jazz right now is the lack of a playmaker. Go back to last season. The Jazz had a tremendous start to the year. They were the 1 seed in the NBA, in the Western Conference, after the first month, and that was when they had Mike Conley. And Mike Conley brings you exactly that.
Maybe it's just stupid of me. Maybe all the coaches would laugh at me if they heard me say this, but it's like, maybe, because he's been terrible. But like maybe you go to Chris Dunn, and you're just like, well, Chris, you're going to dribble the ball up the court, and you're not going to turn it over, and you're going to get the ball out of your hands. Yes. Now the problem is he has been turning it over. Like that's the issue. But yeah, like if Talen Horton-Tucker can't shoot, well then who cares if Chris Dunn can't shoot? Like at least Chris Dunn's going to try and lock up defensively and set a tone. Like maybe you go with Chris Dunn and Ochai, and you're just like, well, at least they're going to try and play defense.
Yep.
And that sets a tone, and maybe you can be held to play against for 48 minutes, or at least the first 12 minutes of the game, as opposed to what's been going on, which is patty cakes off. The Jazz just are not that hard to play against.
Next up, we have a group of questions from Tony Anderson. First, why is Jordan Clarkson struggling to get to his spots and hang on to the ball this year? Is it a system issue?
I do think a little bit of it is who he's playing next to. Again, I'm not hammering Talen. This isn't all Talen's fault. Like,
yes.
The Jazz coaching staff is putting Talen in these situations to do things that maybe he's not capable of doing. But yes, I think Jordan is playing so far off the ball because at times Talen dribbles so much. Jordan doesn't know when he's going to get it. And that is the problem with who they're playing next to him, which is I don't know possession to possession what Talen's going to do. Is he going to dribble for 15 seconds? Is he going to make the right pass? Is he going to do something spectacular? Is he going to do something awful? So Jordan's getting fewer opportunities, and then he's panicking when he does get it. And then, of course, now he's just in his own head.
Yes.
So it's just kind of spiraled. Like his body language is. I hate to do the Bill Simmons body language test because, that can be deceptive. But, like, his body language is so bad right now. Every time he turns it over, he, like, slaps the floor and kind of jogs up the court. Like, he's in his own head. He desperately needs a breakout game, which maybe you just put the ball in his hands and you say, Jordan, you're the point guard. Ochai's your number 2 right next to you, and you just got to do some basic stuff. Like, just do your Jordan thing. Get a lot of shots. Don't worry about it. But the shots you're taking right now are not quite his rhythm.
Yeah. This goes into the next question. What would you do to resolve the terrible guard situation? I think that if you do put Jordan Clarkson out there with Ochai or Keontae, and Jordan has already been taking the ball up a good amount this year, but if you say sort of like you guys are both the point guard, like split taking the ball up, split point guard duties, because, Jordan Clarkson might be the best playmaker when he plays good on the Jazz team. Yep. I think that could be potentially a resolution for what's going on with the guard situation, but all I know is that there needs to be a change.
Or I just don't even put another point guard on the floor with him. Again, you go to the Ochai situation or you do something a little bit more radical, and you just say, Jordan, it's all on you, buddy. Like, and which is why I also think maybe you make him put him back to the 6th man. Like maybe Jordan just needs to be in a spot where he knows what shots he's going to take. And the nice thing about Jordan Clarkson as a 6th man is you could just give him a green light, and maybe you start calling Sexton and whoever, and Keontae or Talen. You say, Jordan, you're going to be our 6th man off the bench. We're going to bring you in at the start of the second quarter when Lowry's not playing and John's not playing, and it's just going to be you and Walker and maybe Kelly, and like you're going to get a lot of shots because no one else can draw him up, and we think you're good at that.
Yep.
Because he has been good at that historically. So either he needs to be like the starting point guard or he needs to be the 6th man like he did when he first got with the Jazz and Quinn Snyder gave him a green light. Maybe that's who we need to get back to with Jordan if you want to see him get successful.
Last up here from Tony Anderson, and you touched on this a little bit. Do you lean into the results so far and tank? Can we really trust bad draft versus good draft historically?
You cannot.
Yes.
Now, look, NBA GMs are right more than they're wrong, which means like if you were to zoom out, look at it from 30,000 feet, like generally the best players would be picked in the earlier spots. And sometimes that does just have to do with like, well, you give them a lot of opportunity so they get more room for growth. And, maybe the guys later in the first round weren't necessarily bad players, but they didn't have the same opportunity to develop on good teams. But generally they get it right. So when you do hear, hey, this isn't as good a draft as last year, that's probably accurate. Now, if we wanted to go through the rookies, we won't do that right now. Maybe we can do that next week because it's a lighter Jazz schedule. We can look at how the Jazz rookies are performing next to other rookies. It's like, look, Amen and Ausar Thompson have been fine, like Asar was the better twin early and has like really fallen off
Yeah.
the last couple of games. So Amen has not been good yet. Scoot has not been good yet. Vic is unreal.
Yes.
I mean, he had 38 and 10 and just like dominated the Phoenix Suns, which was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I'm like, man, that's fun to watch that guy do that. But it's just, the rookies are not good. You know, Brandon Miller's been pretty good, and Charlotte's way better than I think everyone expected. I thought they'd be the worst team in the NBA, and he's helped them not be that. So some of the rookies have been okay. Most of them have been really bad. How do the Jazz stack up in that situation? And did you get the fourth best rookie with the 16th overall pick in Keontae George? This is very plausible and possible that ends up being the case. And we haven't seen Jarris Walker play. We haven't seen Taylor Hendricks play. We haven't seen some of these guys who were top 10 picks really get into the rotation. Bilal Coulibaly has been playing terribly in Washington all of a sudden after a nice start to the season. Like, it's just so much to be thrown at you. So, you know, bad draft, there's always stars. There's always players that you can find, and every year you're going to find someone you can fall in love with, and if you pick the right guy, you'll get a star.
Yep.
You know, again, the 2013 draft was just historic. It had Anthony Bennett was the number 1 overall pick. Like, Nerlens Noel would have been the number 1 pick, but he blew out his knee at Kentucky. So it was bad, and you have 2 Hall of Famers in it, in Rudy Gobert and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and like C.J. McCollum was in that draft. Like, Kelly Olynyk was in that draft. Kelly's a baller.
Yeah.
Kelly's in his 11th year in the NBA and is still good. Like, that's a good draft. I think Nerlens Noel is like borderline on a roster still. He's not great. I think Otto Porter might have been in that draft.
Yes, I think so.
It's like, that's a good draft, actually. You didn't know who was the best player, but there were good players. So, no, there's no such thing as a bad draft. There might not be a proven LeBron at the top. It's always nice when there is. That happens once every 15 years.
Next up from Luke, is this a tank year? What do you think the Jazz's timeline is for a championship, and who do you see as a part of it? I think that it's a little too early to call it a tank year. You can look at how they've played so far and maybe say it's looking like a tank year. I'd say you can for sure make that assumption this time next month when the Jazz have about 20, 30 games under their belt. Timeline for a championship, it's really hard to say when you're in a situation. The Jazz have a lot of assets, right? They have a lot of great draft picks. They have the potential to make a move to get into maybe not contention, but playoff contention first. I think that you can just go with the classic 5 years, you know, maybe turn this around in 5 years. Who could be a part of a Jazz championship run in the near future? I'd say the easy answer is Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, Keontae George. What do you think?
You would hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Taylor Hendricks. You know, you hope those guys are in the conversation. The hard part about this is that you would hope you were further along this year, so you had enough data to say, like, okay, well, the superstar you need to get is Joel Embiid, or it's Luka Doncic, or it's, you know, this guy. You don't know that right now because there are so many problems everywhere. You don't know what the biggest hole you have to plug is, that you're like one step away. So that's where the Jazz are in a really difficult spot. And it's more like, hey, why didn't you spend money on Austin Reeves this offseason? Like, that becomes a bigger question for me. Like, why didn't you even throw an offer sheet at him? Like, okay, so Lakers match it. Like, good. Lakers match it. They spend more money on Austin Reeves. You gave him a discount? Like, that's where I start to wonder, like, what should the Jazz have done? Maybe that was a mistake versus, hey, who are you going to trade for this offseason? Like, the problem is you thought it was going to be Luka. Well, they're 7-1 and one of the best teams in the NBA. Like, he's not going to become available. He's happy now because they're winning. And you've got another star next to him in Kyrie Irving. Okay, so that's off the board. And you know that Giannis Antetokounmpo's off the board. He just signed for 3 years. Like, it's flawed.
Not a lot out there.
Now, you hope that what's going on in Milwaukee continues. They've been pretty mediocre to start the year. They're bad they're winless on the road. Or they beat Brooklyn last night, but they have not looked good. They're 1-1 on the road, and I think they're 2 games above 500. Like, you hope that disintegrates, and they're like, oh, we are so stuck with Dame for 3 more years of this terrible contract. We have to unload Giannis because Brook Lopez isn't good anymore and Chris Middleton isn't good anymore. And then Giannis still becomes available, and then maybe you're the Jazz. You could trade for him. But
yes.
It's
rough.
It's rough. You don't know which even player to go after, and it's hard to throw all your assets behind a player when you're this far away from competing. The other teams that have done that, Minnesota was close to competing. They said, we need a Rudy Gobert. Cleveland was close to competing. They said, we need a Donovan Mitchell. The Jazz aren't even in that spot where they're close to competing. They're going the other direction. So then you add, a top 5 pick, and you hope he can play, and then you hope Keontae's good by the end of the year, and maybe Taylor Hendricks is good by the end of the year, and your new guy can play, and then you're closer to adding that piece. But even then, as the Jazz have learned, after Donovan Mitchell's year, it's really aggressive to go out his rookie year and add Mike Conley because actually Mike Conley wasn't the right fit next to Donovan. He was just too little and Donovan could do some of the same things that Mike did, like you would have been better off going and trying to trade for Lauri Markkanen from Chicago at that point instead of trying to trade for Mike Conley. That would have been the better move, but you didn't have enough data, but you felt like you needed to rush it, and you get yourself in trouble. So it's a game of patience. And look, the Jazz knew this was a possibility. I talked to people who knew what was going on, and I asked Danny Ainge before the season, I was like, it seems like there's a lot of ways for this to be a successful year, and it's not all playoffs. And they were like, yeah, you can get closer to winning a title. Jazz weren't going to win a title this year anyways.
No.
So if you add another top 5 pick, like technically that's successful. Is it like a trip to the dentist? Sure, for Jazz fans. Like they hate this. Jazz fans are not interested in what's going on right now. They don't want to be a part of this. You could actually still get closer to a title because you had a top piece in the draft, but like that's not fun.
No.
So it's why I wish Jazz fans appreciated last year a little bit more. I know people were like, tank last year. It's like tanking stinks.
Yes.
It's not fun to watch. It's not fun to cover. Like, you never really want to tank. I get that last year was the year to do it, but like I promise you had more fun watching last year's team than them losing every game like this, hoping that you'd get Victor Wembanyama, only to end up with, a Men Thompson. It's like, well, he might not be better than Keontae George, and at least you got 37 wins out of it last season or whatever it was. So that's always the balance you got to strike.
Next up from Paige, is the defense a coaching issue or a personnel issue? Is it going to get any better without trades?
Personnel. I just think it's
simple
personnel.
As that.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, how many quote good defenders did the Jazz have?
2 or 3,
maybe.
Yeah.
Like I think Walker's going to be a good defensive player. Like he's really good around the rim, which is a good metric for good defensive teams. Like you have a monster around the rim who stops everyone from going and attacking. That helps. And Walker's been bad to start the year. Now, if he starts having more 5-block games like he did last night and did a couple of nights ago, you'll feel a lot better, and that will help. Lowry's okay. He's not a great defensive player, but he's big and he's okay. John Collins has been disappointing there so far. Backcourt is bad. Talen's not a good defensive player. Jordan's really not a good defensive player. So Ochai might be okay, but he's young. Chris Dunn might be okay. He's not in the rotation.
Yeah, he's been struggling.
He's barely in the rotation, So he fouls every time he gets on the floor, like within the first 30 seconds. I don't know why he's trying to get in somebody's shorts immediately. Like, I'm going to lock you up. It's like, well, you don't need to lock him up 75 feet from the basket. Just like stop him from getting to the paint so easily. That's the problem. So the Jazz just don't really have the personnel. And yeah, eventually it's going to be like, yeah, you got to go out and get Jaden McDaniels. Like, you got to get those guys who actually play defense.
Yep. We got 2 more. This one we already touched on, but I'm still going to say it really quick. Parker Evans, I know it's early, but if things don't get back on track, would it be worth resting players to get the young guys more time? Is the upcoming draft projected to be strong enough to make it worth it? Like we said, we'll probably see Keontae get more minutes and maybe into the starting lineup sooner rather than later. And then maybe as well, the Taylor Hendricks process will be sped up a little bit. And no such thing as a bad draft. You can always find a gem.
And the thing I would say is resting is the wrong word.
Yes.
Like, just don't play Taylor. Like, that's not resting Taylor. Like, who cares? He's not on the team next year. He's on an expiring contract. The question does become, hey, if in December, when everyone is trade eligible again and the kind of the first trade window really opens up, do you start shopping Kelly and Talon and saying like, hey, there's $23 million in combined salaries. Like, that's a decent amount of money, and they're both expiring. And if you team $23 million in expiring contracts with a draft pick, like, you actually can probably get a decent player back. Do you do that, or do you just have a fire sale and say, we'll take second-round picks for Kelly Olynyk, who can help a good team like anybody? I mean, Kelly Olynyk could help Miami. Kelly Olynyk could help a lot of these teams, and just say, well, that clears a spot for Taylor Hendricks to play 30 minutes or 25 minutes a night. And maybe that's the move. You don't rest Taylor, you just don't play Taylor. So that's what I'd keep an eye on.
Before the year, we talked about like maybe a win-now trade, but it's looking like that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
And maybe instead of draft picks, even, you could go for a younger player. For example, Minnesota would never let go of him, but like Jalen McDaniels, right? He's young and he's showing a lot of promise in areas defensively where the Jazz could use that. Do you think that that's maybe a possibility?
Yeah, yes, not him, obviously.
Yeah.
He's basically untouchable. But yes, you look at another team that's like, ooh, we're close. I mean, the team is Oklahoma City, right?
Yeah.
Like,
they have too many young players.
The problem is, like, I had someone ask me, and we could have addressed it here. It was in an old conversation I was having about Lowry. I think it kind of accelerates the Jazz rebuild because he's so good now. It's hard to be bad for 4 seasons and get 4 top 10 picks. Like, you can't do that. That doesn't mean you have to go all in this season, but like, you probably can't just be a cellar dweller for 3 years with Lowry on your roster. And they had asked, do you trade him to Oklahoma City for 5 draft picks. It's like, well, they'd have to be 5 unprotected picks, and even Oklahoma City doesn't have that.
Yeah.
They've got a bunch of picks. I don't think they have 5 unprotected picks, and certainly not 5 from bad enough teams. You're like, oh, those are actually going to click.
Mm-hmm.
But if they came asking for the right number of pieces that they think are going to put them into championship contention, Lowry might be the only one. But it's like, well, I want Jalen Williams back. Is that Jalen Williams, that their second-year player?
Yes.
Or I want Chet. Like, that's the deal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's what it's going to be. And you may not want Chet because you already have Walker. Now, Chet's better than Walker.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, that's the young player that you go after and say, well, if you guys feel like you're one piece away from competing and it's Lowry, okay, it's going to cost you so much. It's going to be unreal because draft picks don't mean as much to the Jazz right now. They have so many draft picks. You're going to need young pieces back if the Jazz are really going to turn and lean into being a young team. It would require one of those guys. But yeah, maybe you go find a young player on a team that's not playing a whole lot and you believe in and could help you. That does happen. You do see teams make those types of trades.
Last up here from Drive Piper, true or false question. Walker Kessler is intimidated on court by more alpha NBA big men.
I think he's not as strong as some of those guys. And it's like, well, you might say like I'm getting betaed by these alpha big men. It's like, he's just stronger than I am because he's 30 and has 4 kids and I'm 22 or whatever he is, and like I'm still trying to figure out like what my body's going to look like. Like, he's not done maturing physically. Walker does not have the man's body yet that he will have by the time he's 30 and is going to be a tree trunk.
Yes.
You know, he's going to be a tank at some point. But yeah, Steven Adams is stronger than he is. I know Steven Adams isn't playing this year, but like Jonas Valanciunas is way stronger. Brook Lopez is way stronger. And I thought Walker was actually really good last night. Like Walker's 2 best games were against Jokic, who's the best player on the planet, and last night against Vucevic, who's an all-star every 3 seasons. So, like, no, I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think he's intimidated by people.
Yeah, I disagree as well. I think that in the NBA, like you're in the best basketball league in the entire world. There's a whole lot of ego in the NBA. And now I'm not going to say that if Giannis isn't driving down the lane full speed at you, you're not going to clench your teeth a little bit,
right.
you know?
Right.
But I don't think there's a lot of intimidation. I think that Walker Kessler acknowledges he was 3rd in Rookie of the Year race last year. He's going to be a good player in the NBA for a long time, and he's just not quite there yet physically, like you said.
And starting a season is hard because everyone's healthy, teams are hungry, no one's given it up yet, and guys by the middle of the season are taking days off. Just like, and even when they're playing, they're like, taking the day off. And Walker was so hungry last year, he took advantage of some of that. It's different your first 2 weeks of the season, 3 weeks of the season when everyone's fresh, healthy, thinks their team can make the playoffs and is going to play hard. And over time, Walker will get back to playing well. And then guess what? By next season, when he's starting again the first week of the season, he will be better than he was this year. Like, he's still doing a lot of this stuff for the very first time. I think it's easy to forget that.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Jazz Notes podcast. We will be back this time next week.
A lot of questions.
Yes. Thank you guys for that.
Appreciate
Keep it up.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter at KSL Sports. You can follow me at Ben's Hoops. Follow Chandler at Chandler Holt KSL. And again, follow us on Threads. KSL Sports. I will send out the Q&A question. If you would like to have your question answered in writing form, I will do that on a Threads question. So follow us on Threads. Appreciate you doing that. We'll be back next week.